Ja, herzlich willkommen. Welcome to you all. We would like to discuss today green hydrogen, the pathways to a climate-friendly and fair green hydrogen economy here at the German Pavilion. And I'm glad to welcome you on behalf of the organizers of this event, that is Climate Alliance Germany, that is Bread for the World, WWF, the International PTX Hub, German Watch, and the German CEO Alliance for Climate and Economy. And what we would like to do is, on this side event, we would like to ask ourselves, green hydrogen can play an important role in the transition to a fossil-free, climate and environment-compatible future. That's what we know. If done correctly, an international green hydrogen economy can also contribute to overcome energy poverty and to a sustainable and just economic development of countries in the global south. Thus, specific and comprehensive sustainability criteria are vital. We'll want to discuss here in this panel with our guests proposals for such criteria developed by civil society actors from Europe and from Africa. And we are unfortunately a little bit under time pressure, as one of our speakers is leaving a little bit earlier, and therefore, without further notice and without going in further details, I would like to welcome the Minister of State, Anna Lührmann. And I wanted to introduce you properly, but now I'm really having my...
It's all good.
Yeah, but now we have the time for that.
Ich kann mich auch selber vorstellen, wenn Sie wollen.
No, that's not possible. Oh no.
Das kriege ich hin, oder?
Yeah. So, what is this? One page is missing. Anna Lührmann, you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you very much for coming out for this side event. Indeed, we all know that we cannot achieve a transition to a carbon neutral economy without green hydrogen. And the COP27 really presents a very good opportunity for us to talk about this potential and to unlock the potential. The benefits are obvious. Green hydrogen and its derivatives are key for the full decarbonization of all those sectors that are hard to electrify, such as steel production or the chemical industry, as well as heavy shipping and aviation. For example, I was recently back in my constituency in the heart of Germany, and I spoke with a big construction company that is now having a new project on how to actually have these big trucks in a carbon neutral way, and they are of course working on solutions with hydrogen. So it's clear we need to work on this, and also this means that basically the whole global energy economy will be transformed. Because for some countries whose business model rests on exporting fossil fuels, and they will need to adapt, ideally also by investing in the production of green hydrogen. And then also many of today's energy importers might actually become producers of hydrogen. So it really shifts all these dynamics in the global energy policy. So in order to benefit from this coming H2 world, we need to take three things into consideration. First, we really need to move very quickly from this ambition of this transition to actually action. So we need to invest in the production of green hydrogen. We are in Germany where we have doubled our aim in domestic production of green hydrogen from 5 gigawatt to 10 gigawatts of capacity by 2030. But we also support the ramp up of green hydrogen supply chains outside of Europe, for example, with our very innovative double auction scheme called H2 Global. Because this H2 Global is really innovative because it offers long-term offtake agreements at a fixed price and facilitates thus the market ramp up in non-EU countries. And we are planning to invest more than 4 billion euros into this program, so it's a good opportunity. And also we support, of course, the EU targets to this regard. Second, we need to really take a holistic view across the whole value chain. So we also need to come to a point and to learn from mistakes of the past that actually green hydrogen is produced in a way that also benefits the local population. That we don't put the export of green hydrogen over reducing energy poverty in the countries where it's produced. Thus, we need to use the resources used also for the production of green hydrogen in order to defossilize domestic energy systems and start this energy transition also in the producing countries. Thirdly, we need to work on new partnerships. We need to create a positive agenda with less division in the world, as Irina has also called for. And it is, for us in our global foreign policy, it's part of a positive agenda with many, many countries around the world. Again, to close, I want to remind you that we in Germany will only be able to cover around 1/3 of our expected demand in green hydrogen by domestic resources. So we will rely heavily on the imports from other countries, and on this we are very much looking forward to working together with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we are. I would like to give Amos Wemanya the opportunity to speak to us. He is the PowerShift Africa's Senior Advisor for Renewable Energy and Just Transition. And Amos, you have been engaged in community climate resilience programming and environmental activism and energy consultants for over 10 years, so you have a vast experience. So please give us your take on what are the key sustainability criteria for green hydrogen production and PTX products in Africa according to African civil society perspective.
Yeah, like it has already been said, green hydrogen economy offers opportunities to unlock Africa's renewable energy potential. But for a continent like Africa, it offers an opportunity to accelerate leapfrogging to 100% renewable energy, enabling access, but also powering local industries. But we are coming from an energy system that has failed Africa. So for green hydrogen economy to be useful and helpful to Africa and help Africa meet its key energy priority needs, it must be underpinned by transformative principles. And some of these transformative principles need to be pegged on energy access as a human right. That everyone needs to have access to modern energy services to be able to overcome the challenges of the climate crisis, but also meet their development aspirations. We have seen previous energy regimes having issues with good governance practices, where even contracts are not transparent to the would-be beneficiaries of these development projects. While we're looking at green hydrogen economy, it must strive to be transparent, to have good governance practices, respect human rights in areas where these projects are going to be developed. We all know green hydrogen development will need large-scale investments in large-scale energy projects. This will mean we need land, we need water resources that many communities still depend on for their survival. So the issues of social protection, social safeguards, issues of human rights are key to the green hydrogen economy development, especially in a continent like Africa. Issues of having meaningful multi-stakeholder participation. And I underline the word meaningful because sometimes participation is very superficial. Meaningful stakeholder engagement is very important. This means that they are engaged and the energy projects that are developed would be fit for purpose to meet their energy needs, but also help the world decarbonize. So, green hydrogen economy offers us these great opportunities to start from a clean slate, to design energy systems that are just in the procedural way, the way engagements are made, but also distributional justice, where the benefits that comes from investments in green hydrogen are mutually shared. The communities where the projects are developed are benefiting from energy that is being generated before we think of exporting, because export-oriented energy design systems have failed many communities in Africa. We have seen oil, we have seen gas, we have seen coal, not benefiting communities. But we have a chance to design a system that will benefit African communities with green hydrogen. Let's not get it wrong like we have done before. Let's get it right. And this can only be done if all of us come together, if we involve all stakeholders, bring them on the table so that we have an inclusive system. And there's no blueprint. We all of us have ideas on how we can develop a system that serves the purpose of limiting global heating, but also meeting development needs of the global south and specifically continents like Africa.
Thank you very much. So we are realizing we are at the beginning of a very challenging process, and you have now presented the ideas of the civil society. Now I have the pleasure to introduce to you Franz Kalenga. He's the Senior Manager for Sustainable Energies at NAMCOR and a technical advisor on green hydrogen and synthetic fuels to Honorable Minister of Mines and Energy of the Republic of Namibia, where his role includes the drafting of the green hydrogen strategy and roadmap. So, what he's describing was a little bit in general what it needs. We heard the word involvement, justice, transparency, communities should benefit. Please, can you present your ideas on how to go about it in Namibia? What is your take on that?
Thank you for having me, first of all, and trying to accommodate within the short space of time that I have. And I tend to agree with Amos, what he had alluded to, of what kind of an economy we should strive on having in terms of green hydrogen. For me, I look at it that green hydrogen has given us an opportunity to pause and reset for all the wrong things that we have done so that we can do them in the right way, because the path is quite long. Now, in the respect of Namibia, what we have done, I would like to blow my own horn by saying that we have done quite well. And of course, we didn't do it alone. We did it in partnership. And partnership, which I'm very much glad to sit on the German Pavilion, because that has been a partnership that has helped us to demonstrate what Amos has just alluded to. What have we done? Due to our international relations agreement, we managed to get a grant funding from the Ministry of Higher Education of Germany of 30 million euros. Now, what we have done with that 30 million to cascade it and just breaking it down is, we took the 5 million and put it up into scholarships. So we are the first country in the world to have scholarship programs designed for green hydrogen. Why? Because we understand we are going to have an industry, and you cannot have an industry if you haven't capacitated your own people. Otherwise, you will end up having or importing skills, and we don't want that. We want to rewrite that story. What we have done is we have put up a 5 million again for a national green hydrogen strategy. It needs to give us a roadmap of how we are going to develop this. And not just a strategy and a roadmap, but a communication strategy on how do we translate our national ambitions bottom down to a person deep in the village. They should be able to understand what is green hydrogen and what economic benefits or opportunities are there for them. Not only just in English, but in all the vernacular languages. And that currently, we signed, that strategy was launched on Monday here by our president and the minister. On top of that, the remaining money, what we have done with it, we have put it into pilot projects, of which we are saying Namibian companies, together with the German companies, they need to come up so that we can test the viability of hydrogen for domestic use, not for export. So these are programs that we have put in place. It's really speaking to the Namibian people. It's really speaking and setting an example to the African nation to say that let us start home first before we can think of exporting. On top of these projects that I've mentioned, now we have the bigger project at the bigger scale of about where we are looking at producing 300,000 tons of ammonia green, which is the hyphen. What Namibia has done is, when we realized that we want to do the green hydrogen, we put up a request for proposal. Globally, a lot of companies bid for it to be able to build this nascent industry. We got Hyphen on board. Hyphen has come. As we speak, we are about to finalize signing the implementation agreement that will start with the feasibility, because it needs to be viable. You cannot just jump into it without making your homework. We are going to do the feasibility study. After the feasibility study, then the industrial part starts. In the bid, it had 4 parts. You needed to demonstrate your capability, technical capability, if you are able to do this, or if you have done this before, of which we know, to your surprise, that we went to Germany in a village called, I think it's Duisburg, if I'm not mistaken.
Duisburg?
Is it Duisburg?
Duisburg, but it's not a village. I'm not sure.
Is it a, yeah, maybe it's a, I'm sorry, maybe it's a town. When we went for the Berlin energy transition, where Enetrag is having a plan, they are producing hydrogen and it's being stored in fuel cell, and the electricity is being converted as a dispatchable power to the EU grid.
Yeah.
That we are going to do in Namibia with our hydrogen project to respond to our energy needs, because we understand our national power utility grid, it's small. 70% of our power we import it, but green hydrogen offers that opportunity to change that narrative. On top of that, Namibia is one of the countries known also for agriculture. The ammonia that we are going to get, there are a lot of low-hanging fruits from just the hydrogen project. What we have done with the negotiation is we have grouped ourselves in a sense that there's a technical group, there's a legal group, there's a socio-economic group, there is a physical and tax group, meaning these groups are negotiating good, for lack of better word, deals for the country. What are the tax incentives going to be like? What kind of jobs? It's one thing to mention that the project is going to make 15,000 jobs. How did you come up with it? Did you do a skills set analysis? Is it just engineers? Or because a lot of people just think it's engineers. But to put up as mere as a solar plant, it requires you digging the ground, putting in cement, casting those concrete pillars. That requires vocational training. There is a talk taking place between our vocational training centers and we have formed up what we call Namibia Green Hydrogen Research Institute. The R&D needs to go on so that the technology and the educational institutions also, they speak to one another. within the jobs, we are saying that out of 30% of that, it needs to be Namibian youth. Why? Because we want to tackle the youth unemployment. Only specialized skills that we are going to accept because we don't have it. But give us time, we are going to build based on the scholarship, the upscaling of already qualifications that we have, so that this speaks to Namibia, this speaks to Africa, but of course with the help of partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. But now there are also some risks. I mean, it sounds wonderful, and I have the feeling that it's well thought through. But I was in Namibia recently, and I talked to some Namibians, and they were wondering, how they get involved, because communication, it sounds a little bit as if you are informing them, but how do you involve people? That would be my question. And then also, there are also maybe risks. I hear that, there's a national park at Lüderitz. When all this construction is coming in, are you not fearing that you lose important sites for biodiversity once you are establishing these plants? So maybe you can come a little bit how you talk about it. What are the risks that you see and how you are going to deal with it?
Thank you very much. Indeed, you are right. This kind of projects of this magnitude, they definitely come with risk. But so as risk comes, there are mitigations, approaches that I need to. Let me start with the conversation. So what we have done also is, on the strategy, I mentioned earlier that as we speak, McKinsey, because we have contracted McKinsey and a local company called Monasa, they are going to develop a communication strategy to go down countrywide and be able to translate that in the languages that people understand. Meaning there is stakeholder engagement that is taking place to avoid a gap on what the government is really trying to do and the expectations of the people. So these expectations needs to be met. You cannot have an industry that doesn't have private sector. So that is also a risk because private sector drives industry. Government just gives policy. So what we have done is through our Namibia Investment Promotion Development Board, we have created what we call Private Sector Green Hydrogen Task Force. So every private sector needs to register themselves and be able to follow the proceedings of green hydrogen and see how across the value chain can they participate. It's not a secret. Everybody is welcome to you to identify, be it from generation, from storage to transportation, be it as it may. Everybody needs to be involved, and government is launching that. We have a website called the gh2namibia.com where all these ambitions are being articulated. What we have done prior to us coming here with the Minister of Energy, we have gone to every region to articulate government's ambition to the local and give them the platform to ask. Not only just telling them, but to ask them for advice. What do they think? How should we approach it? I'll come to your second question of the park. Yes, we understand Namibia have about 1,500 kilometers long of a coastal line, of which is the national park. Now, we are saying, let's pause and look at opportunity cost. To what extent is this project? And what damage will it cause? As we speak, along that 15-kilometer line, there is an area that is not of high risk where mining activities are taking place already. So even the green hydrogen is going to overlap together with the mining activities, probably the area where they have already finished mining. As we are mining wind and solar, it's not underground. Them they've done underground. There are talks right now of coming up with what we call the Namibia Green Hydrogen and Synthetic Fuels Act. Now, that act is going to regulate the environmental friendliness. not to forget that Namibia is one of the first countries that have environmental protection actually in their law. Since inception, with or without green hydrogen. So we are well cognizant of that. There are talks whether you are going to deproclaim one part of it. Again, looking at the economic benefits. What do the country needs to benefit out of it than just preserving this is in a sense that preserving something that it might not, almost mentioned now, our huge problem is energy poverty. People have hunger. People don't have access to electricity. Now you are saying there is a piece of land here, frankly speaking, we are not going to touch it, you must just die hungry, when you could have benefited and be able still to come up with strategy to preserve it. So all these preservation strategies, they are going to come into the strategy and into the law on how to go further, because there will still be projects that will come further. The biggest risk also is that now we have climate funders that are saying, if you are going to do the project in the park, we are not going to give you money. And that's where we are saying, but that is wrong. You want us to transition. The best place where we are supposed to transition is this. But the question is, how do we meet each other halfway so that we get the funding to unlock the project? I know one would ask, what would Namibia require from Germany, for example? The answer is more money. Money and money to unlock this project so that it can create jobs, so that we can build our grid, so that we can be self-sustainable. And in that, once they say charity begins at home, if we take care of our domestic problems, we will be more than happy and gladly give the excess energy also to help out Europe. I hope I have tried to answer that.
Thank you very much. And Anna Lührmann is here, so maybe she can even say one or two words to it. But before I let you go, because I know that you have another presentation or discussion, when is Namibia ready to send the first hydrogen to Germany? Yeah, I mean, this is always discussed, you know. When are you ready? When is it?
That's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
We are looking at 2026, 2027.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, based on the timelines that is there. But we also have to remain cognizant for the fact that we are about to conclude the implementation agreement now with Hyphen for them to get to do the job. And that is going to take 2 years of feasibility, that is 2023, 2024. By 2025, 2026, we should be able to give you the first drop.
Okay. Anna Lührmann, do you want to respond to what he said?
I think, I mean, as you alluded to, no, I think we're collaborating already quite a bit with during the Berlin energy transition dialogues when we had sort of the study visits, and indeed Namibia is a great partner. And I'm sure that we are already working on many things, and that there will also be more discussions in the future.
Thank you so much for coming and being in the discussion. And I'm happy that you know your colleagues from the from the African civil society. So therefore, I'm sure that you will have a continuous discussion on how Namibia further develops its hydrogen production.
Thank you so much for having. Just in conclusion, I would just like to say that this is a great platform because conversation needs to take place. When there are no conversation, we leave a vacuum for speculations. So it's important to have conversation, hear from what is other people are doing on the other front. There's an alliance called the African Green Hydrogen Alliance that is also coordinating efforts, especially to the Africans, that regional integration is very important. We cannot afford to start having conversation in isolation or country to country. We need to match to one another because we have a lot of resource potential. You can look at the cobalt in the DRC, the platinum in South Africa, the lithium in Namibia, the copper in Zambia. All these are key ingredients to the success of the green hydrogen economy. So we need to speak to one another and see how we can build a center of excellence in the Southern Africa. It can be in Namibia. We are welcome to take up that challenge. But thank you very much for having me and
Yes.
for everyone here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm happy that not only a representative from Namibia is here with us, but also somebody from South Africa. And I would like to welcome Mrs. Makoma Lekalakala.
Thank you. As long as you pronounce that slowly, you'll get it right. Le kala kala. Got it now.
Lekalakala.
Yes.
She's the director of Earth Life Africa in Joburg, an environmental justice and anti-nuclear organization. And she's a strong campaigner for a just and fair society. And I think what is really exciting, that her commitment to climate justice in South Africa has led civil society to win the first South African climate change legal court case against the government. I think that's really something special, and it was about the reversal of the nuclear deal by the South African and the Russian government. And she got several prizes. I don't want to start mentioning them. And she was recently appointed to the Presidential Climate Commission, a body tasked in advising the President of South Africa on the process of a just transition to a low-carbon development. It seems the South African government has understood that they have to talk to you.
Yes, I think it's quite important for us to have continuous engagements, to interact, and to also find ways on how do we bring solutions that will take us to the future. In the past days, I've been at the South African Pavilion, and there has been discussions around, robust discussions around the just transition and how do we get there. And hydrogen, or green hydrogen, has been one of those topics that have been discussed. And I've been listening attentively, and I think from my side, or from our side, coming from an activist environmental justice organization, it's quite important that we raise the concerns. Yes, we agree that we need to move away towards a low carbon development or economic development, and that this decarbonization should lead us to a carbon neutral space around 2050. But however, I think the technology that is being brought up, I think in the past negotiations, there's been discussions around what kind of alternative technology can we have so that we move towards a low carbon economic development. And there's been various technologies that have been suggested, and it seems like the hydrogen is the one that is like now being very popular, that is being, there's been also some roadmaps around that, some exchanges, funding, like the Namibian colleague had said now. But then this technology, we need to ask ourselves, what is its ecological footprint? It's a technology, but also we need to take into consideration the full social and environmental impacts of this technology. One thing is, I would not really want to repeat what Amos had said, but just to highlight a few points. But also, I think it would be important to get a testimony from someone. I've seen the comrade here from the DRC. So within my brief remarks, I would want you to bring a testimony, I hope that's okay, so that we can understand far much better the issues that Amos was bringing in, and some of the issues I'll briefly touch on. The land use, it's quite important because the space that is going to be needed. And in that space, that would mean that the cultural and indigenous land or the way of life of the people is going to be disrupted. There's one thing that every time we talk about the biodiversity, people talk about mitigating biodiversity, but I don't know how do we really mitigate destroying or violating people's spirituality. And that is one issue that most of the time we don't find that is being being attended to, the cultural life, the traditional life of people, because their land is being taken away. So obviously there's going to be disruption, and that disruption also links towards the biodiversity destruction, and their dignity is eroded because their lives is embedded within what is around them. And the Southern African region, it's a drought-stricken area. And I'm just wondering because the hydrogen is going to need a lot of water. And the little water that we have, we would rather have it for consumption of the populace and also for doing what is very important, or also watering gardens and stuff like that. It cannot, the little water that we have, be directed to that. We've had problems of mining in the Southern African region, and in South Africa, there's so many issues that come up with mining. Firstly, there's no free prior informed consent of the communities. So, and also that that is because when communities resist, because they're protecting what belongs to them, because they have not been properly engaged around what really needs to happen in their lands. And the minute they resist, because that is their resistance is protecting their dignity, then repression comes in. And I don't think it's only in South Africa, it also happens in other countries. And we know that even if people say there's safe mining, there's never been. We've seen various irresponsibility. When mining happens, there's no decommissioning. There's been issues about, a lot of stuff. But whenever mining comes, people are promised jobs. And those jobs, most of the time, are never there. This is a new technology. Does our people have all the skills to work with that technology? So that means labor force would be important from other countries and be brought. The other issues around the safety of the technology. We just had an incident in Beirut where there was an explosion in 2020. How safe is this technology? And with methane being one of the emissions that come out of the technology, is that safe enough? Because already we have problems with pollution in the atmosphere. But compliance also, it's one issue, and that is what I heard from the discussions in the past days, because it looks like there's a real speed to have this technology working. And with that real speed having, that means the legislation and regulatory frameworks in different countries, it's not going to be respected. And that is not really what we'd want to see. The mistakes of the past must not be repeated. And those mistakes of the past, I think, would come in testimonies like that from Emmanuel. And I would like to give a mic to Emmanuel just to give us a testimony of what is happening where he comes from.
Maybe you come in front.
You can come here.
Thank you very much, Makoma. Hello, everyone. Just to say that in DRC, I think we need to build a big dam who will become the first big dam in the world. And through that, we need to produce hydrogen. I know that German in the past was interested by that project. And today we talk with Fortescue Future Industries who need to invest in that project. But our big question is to know then if the energy will be produced by the big dam like Inga is a green hydrogen. Why? Because big Inga the large Inga will have too much impact in communities issues, in environmental issues, in economic issues, maybe in the communities. We think that this project will put out of this land more than 40,000 communities. Will be called to go out and to leave this land because of the building of that project. In environmental issues, today, because of Inga 1 and 2 is exist, we have too much a species of a fish who is dispersed today, and the communities is become very poor because one of his economic issues is that, and agricultural. There is a immense impact about that, and another thing is the debts that this investment can bring to the country, and finally the communities will call to pay this debt to the taxes and others. That is why this project will bring too much impact to the communities and environmental issues. We are and the big question for us, if the hydrogen will be for us, but that will be a green one. And I can just finish my few example by a question to the German. I know that German need the hydrogen today, but my question is to know what do you think about that project, maybe in Namibia and everywhere, who will bring too much impact? How do you need to do? You will finance the project who will not respect environmental issues, who will not respect the lawyers, who will not respect human rights and others. That is
Thank you very
a few
much.
questions that I need to ask. Thank you
I think
very
it's
much.
very practical. I know that the former German government, not this one, was quite interested in that project, and there was a representative of the German government promoting it and lobbying for it. So I wonder, what is your take nowadays on that project? Maybe we get a direct response to it.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
nice.
Well, first, thanks a lot for sharing this here, and I think it's indeed it sheds light exactly on the considerations that we need to make now in sort of energy production without carbon emissions to protect our climate, but at the same time we need to make sure that the impacts on local communities, you were also speaking about water supplies for drinking water, that they are taking into account as well. I wrote down all the information about the projects. I'm actually not aware of the current government position on this project or whether there's an involvement, because these things are also run in the Ministry for Development Cooperation. I'm from the Foreign Office, but I will check on it. And thanks for raising this issue. And when we talk about green hydrogen, the primary issue we're talking about is green hydrogen produced from solar and wind. And of course, when it comes to water power, there are sustainability issues when it comes to the huge water power projects. We have these debates everywhere, so we really carefully need to look into this. But thanks for sharing it. I'll take a note and I'll check on it when I'm back in Berlin. I also wanted to make the point about the land use, because the land use is indeed another issue that is indeed to take into account, particularly when it comes to huge, large-scale solar parks. However, there are also ways of mitigating the stress that these kind of projects can put on agricultural land, and that is by using, for example, as our colleague from Namibia has said, old mining areas where you can't do which is wasteland, right? Where you can't do agricultural production anyway, to use this. Or I was recently, a month ago, I was in Kosovo, in the Western Balkans, and there we are supporting a project through KfW where a huge solar farm is built on the ashes of coal power plants, basically. So next to the coal power plants, there are big ash fields that are now covered with grass, basically. You can't do agriculture there, but this is where now these big solar farms will come, and they will be big enough to produce 10% of Kosovo's electricity, so quite a lot. And of course, that is the way forward to use these kind of lands, and also technological innovation. By now, there are also the technology starts evolving where you can combine both agriculture production and solar production. because if you do it right, then these solar parks can actually provide shade also for crops that need sometimes shade as well, and that are only needs half sun, half shade. So this is another route to explore.
Thank you very much. Now, last not least, I'm very happy to welcome Erika Mink, and she's the head of government affairs for the ThyssenKrupp Steel Europe and AG, where she is leading on public affairs and government relations with a focus on industrial decarbonization and transition, energy, climate, hydrogen, product policy, and resilience. My goodness. She was previously Vice President of Global Public Affairs at the Tetra Pak Group and held various corporate positions related to sustainability and advocacy. And she is also sort of here presenting the German CEO Alliance for Climate and Economy. Welcome. Actually, I was quite excited. I'm a member of the German Council for Hydrogen, and I have to admit I've never been in at ThyssenKrupp, and it was quite exciting to see how such a huge industry is functioning. This industry is energy hungry. Yeah. And it's very important to decarbonize it as fast as possible. And we know that for the decarbonization of steel, we need a lot of green hydrogen. So, Erika, what is your take on what you've heard before? How do you want to make sure or play your part that the developments are sustainable? I know that you're already active in this field, so maybe you can share some of the experiences with us here.
Yes, thank you very much, and really delighted to be here. Maybe just to frame a bit, so the ThyssenKrupp Group, so we are active in steel, obviously, which is the business where I'm associated with, but we are also a technology provider. So the group has companies, our sister company, Nucera, is producing electrolyzers, and we have other sister companies working also on setting up infrastructure. So as a ThyssenKrupp Group, you know, we see ourselves very much as a facilitator of a hydrogen economy. And that pretty much, you know, was in many parts of the world. When it now comes to the steel business, we are very much German focused, rooted in Germany, and have there our biggest footprint. And that's where we are right now in the process to start the decarbonization, where we have an approval for investments to start with the first, what we call it a DRI, a direct reduction facility, which should be hydrogen ready and eventually hydrogen run in the coming months, so that we should be operational with this new plant, the first of several, in early 2026. So a lot will depend, of course, and for steel, our only way for in the primary steel production is really hydrogen. And it has hydrogen has compared to other sectors as well, a very high, we call it an exchange rate. So for 1 kilogram of hydrogen, we can abate about 28 kilograms of CO2. Nevertheless, you know, we have to see, you know, where do we get how will we source hydrogen in the future? Minister, you mentioned that it will be just 1/3, which we will produce nationally. So our current strategy is very much to look in the European space. So, and in the neighboring countries of the European Union. And that's for the time being our big priority, because imports from further countries where we have long transport distances and hydrogen will have to be transported in form of ammonia is not the first solution we would go for in the steel industry, because of course there is a cost associated with, you know, regasifying it, etc. However, I think we also, from a German industry perspective, we should not see the development of a hydrogen economy for our purposes. Yeah, we heard that there is energy poverty in many parts of the world, and we really believe, and we are also quite proud that our government is very active in this, because this is, the hydrogen economy has to serve many purposes and needs. And I think you mentioned very critical points for a sustainable setup and for sustainability criteria. And I strongly believe, we will need to have standards. We will need to agree on standards. What do we mean with green hydrogen? What are the conditions to produce it? And also to have traceability schemes or chain of custodies for international trade and certification systems. I really believe that must be sort of a baseline in order to get into international trade, and a basis, something to be developed as part of an international cooperation. What I'm hearing from you is also that I think it is going to be critical in this sustainability standards that we look at human rights, we look at water rights, at land rights, we look also at ILO labor standards. We look into capacity building. You all mentioned it, that we need to also build the capacities, but also offer quality jobs in this new economy. And again, looking at it from a European perspective, in Europe we have legislation that defines how we have to trace our supply chains. And I think also there we should look, what are criteria and these criteria, in my view, would have to be applied also to a future commodity called hydrogen. For the steel industry specifically, we have an organization called Responsible Steel, and of which ThyssenKrupp Steel is a member. And within that organization, we have defined various, already standardization schemes and processes to secure sustainable supplies into steel production. And in our sector, I would envisage that we transpose those criteria, of course, also to hydrogen supplies. So I think there are a lot of existing schemes already, also in other sectors. You mentioned that I have a history in the food chain, and also there are certification schemes, and I think where we have to learn and to really see what is adequate to the specific conditions we have in the development of hydrogen and hydrogen production and at a global scale.
You told me before, when we discussed it before, that sometimes that you're having the feeling that there are certain expectations from the partners in the other countries. And that there are certain expectations you can satisfy, or where you can really do something about it, but certain things are not something that you can do, but maybe the government has to sort out, or it is their responsibility. Maybe you can highlight a little bit more on what your experiences are.
I mean, as a company, and as we, as many other companies, especially now in the current situation, of course, we are also involved in conversations about energy partnerships, about hydrogen partnerships, obviously. And I think it really requires a very close collaboration between businesses and the government, because there are certain requirements. We as a company, of course, you would always look at your supply chain, and of course it is price and conditions are of course and technical specifications, absolutely critical. But of course this happens in a bigger geopolitical space, and in some cases, there might be expectations that a company also can address certain geopolitical issues, and that there it gets. I think that is, of course, that is more difficult, and one should really see that these partnerships are developed. I think that's my main message, in a close collaboration on both ends, yeah, between businesses, between governments and government authorities, and of course also civil society, in order to really get it right.
Mm-hmm. Now, coming back to you, thank you very much, Amos. You heard what Franz said. You know, are you happy? Is that what Namibia is doing? Are they on the right track vis-à-vis your expectations from civil society? Is the government on Namibia doing what we expect them to do? What you expect them to do?
No, you did a good job asking Franz that, when do we expect them to get the first molecule to Germany? And he said 2026. I hope in their strategy they intend to get universal energy access for the people of Namibia by 2025, because our ask is that before we start exporting hydrogen, we must service people's needs for energy access to be able to meet their priority energy needs. And of course, we are here in the COP. The reason we are here is because of a failed energy system. And one of the sustainability criteria that we have is that we are not going to use fossil fuels to produce hydrogen. And we are in a climate crisis. And recently, Chancellor Scholz has been going around Africa, promising Africa investments in gas. We don't know whether this is one of the things that investing in Africa's gas is going to be used to produce hydrogen for Germany. When we already know that gas has got us into this problem that we are in today, that gas has not serviced Africa's energy needs. We still have 600 million plus people who do not have access to electricity. So we're looking at these great opportunities that the green hydrogen economy provides. But at the same time, we're looking at, and we are in German Pavilion, we're looking at a German government that's going around Africa promising investments in African gas. And I'm happy Anna is here and can respond to that. What is all this doublespeak?
Yes, I can.
Can you answer directly?
I'm happy to address that. First of all, to use gas to produce hydrogen doesn't really make any sense, right? So that's just sort of as a technical clarification, that particularly from the industry perspective, I think the issue is exactly that the industry needs to replace where they currently use natural gas, these processes with hydrogen. So that's clear. And then indeed, I can hear the irritation from signals that came from Europe during the energy crisis that we're facing since Putin invaded Ukraine. I mean, we had basically until February, we had half of the German heating systems were working with Russian gas, right? And you can ask the question, and rightly so, why we were that dependent on one energy supplier, so that we're now in a big problem that this energy supplier fell away. And we have a clear agreement within the government coalition in Germany that any investment in energy infrastructure that is supported by the government needs to be in line with the Paris Agreement. And I think I'm not telling any secrets when I say that we have currently not a full agreement on what that exactly means for the investment in new natural gas fields. I just asked the question, I mean, the perspective is very clear and the strategy is very clear. We need to get away from natural gas use. We want to become climate neutral by 2045. That means that any investment in new gas fields risk being a stranded asset in a very short time period. So the question about the economic viability of actually investing in new gas fields is on the table. And the same question is on the table that if we, for example, the other thing that is happening throughout Europe as well is that in order to replace natural gas in the very, very short term of this year, next year, the year after that. We are using more coal, which is more has a more negative impact on the climate than natural gas. And this is only a short-term measure that will come to an end very, very soon, and that overall will require that we move even faster on the energy transition in the midterm, that we invest even more in renewable energies, so that the CO2 emissions that are produced more now this year, next year, will be saved again. So what we did, for example, in Germany, at the same time as having to use these coal plants longer, at the same time we agreed to phase out of coal by 2030, at least for the western part of Germany, to stop using coal there. And we have passed, I think, I don't know, something like 10, 15 different laws and directives to speed up the rollout of renewables in Germany, offshore and onshore. And to also save energy, because that's, I mean, if we have less of a demand, then that's relevant. So that's a long answer to your short question, but the bottom line is very clear. We're very committed to the Paris Agreement and to the goals that we sign up for. And I think that the lesson from the turbulences that we're facing now this year, with the shocks from the Russian invasion of Ukraine on the global energy market, the answer for me is clear. These are shocks on sort of the fossil markets, and it's another argument for me to move even faster to renewables, because that's the only way that can protect us actually from these kind of problems in the future.
Makuma, I hear from civil society organizations, especially also from Africa, that they're very skeptical about hydrogen, because they fear that it's something like new colonialism. Also, now the colonizers are those that are energy hungry, and so therefore I wonder, do we have to expect that now civil society actually will sort of fight against the development of green hydrogen for example, in Southern Africa? Maybe you can share a little bit your opinion.
Okay.
And maybe also what it needs, that you don't have the feeling that it is neo-colonialization.
Thank you very much for that question. I think maybe let me start first from the one that you had asked Amos, around Namibia, whether Namibia is doing it right. Mm-hmm. I'm just worried that this hydrogen development in Namibia, it's going to bring much more problems than they have now. For an example, currently in the Okavanga Delta, communities are holding on to their lives because there's an exploration of gas in that area. And this is a sensitive area across 3 countries, Botswana, Namibia, and Angola. And what happens if that delta is being destroyed? You can imagine, it's a desert area. It's also a water scarce country. And my worry is also that I always raise this, that people's spiritual rights are very important, and these are embedded in nature. And it doesn't seem like anyone is taking that seriously, because it's that spirituality that drives people to be able to protect their environment and also to make sure that the ecosystems balance wherever they are. The new colonialism, I think it stems from the fact that even now, I think with the green hydrogen, it's clear. It's the northern countries, particularly Germany, that is at the forefront. There has been research that you have made, intensive research that you've made. You also have made calculations. And we we're asking questions. What is the carbon footprint of this technology? In South Africa, whenever you introduce new technology, it should be low cost. And that is low cost in economics and low cost in environmental or maybe in externalized costs, because we don't expect to have huge externalized costs based on the energy choice that we make. So those would be what we decide. As civil society in the country, we are also part of this. Currently, we're still familiarizing ourselves with the technology. We're still familiarizing ourselves with what really is happening. And some of these issues would come up if really there is a concern. If it's not a low-cost option, if it's not meant to benefit ordinary people, for Sustainable Development Goal number 7, that may not go on. So this colonialism, it will be same as the mining of minerals. Our gold, our diamonds, our platinum has been mined and been taken out of the country for centuries, for decades and decades. And if this technology, then it's manufactured in our country and exported, obviously it's a new form of colonialization that we're experiencing. And we hope that the tables turn. And the question that some of the activists have been asking is Germany unable to generate or manufacture this technology from their side? Why are they running to the south? Is it a question of trading your emissions, that would rather have emissions and you guys don't have emissions? So it's quite a very huge topic that we're talking about. But at the end, I think this raises a lot of questions. As long as it's not going to be done right, compliance is going to be flouted, that then would say that this is real colonialism or energy colonialism that comes in, and also adding to our carbon emissions, destroying people's livelihoods. But we hope that whenever these projects are taking place, the right thing is being done. And I liked when the colleague from Namibia said they will take about 6 to 7 years. I liked it because I thought that maybe in these years they would be doing all compliance and regulatory requirements so that they can start producing.
Mrs. Mink, now ThyssenKrupp is also helping when it comes to capacity building. I think what we also have to realize, it's not only about understanding what green hydrogen is all about, but we need capacity in the respective countries in order to be able to establish the plants to work on it. So maybe you can share a little bit of your ideas of how to go about it, what it needs to build the capacity in Namibia, in South Africa, in every country that is producing now green hydrogen.
Yeah. I mean, as a company, of course, when it comes to capacity building, what we start is with our own workforce. Yeah, so that we make sure that we already start now, blue-collar workers, white-collar workers, professionals to now define what are the skills for the future. We need to run these new technologies. And that's what we actually do right now. We have a program established in Germany together with the respective authorities for blue-collar workers to give additional vocational training. And then, of course, collaborating with scientific institutes and universities to have also the engineering and the professionals ready and qualified to handle these new technologies. But I think it is more than that, and I think here probably international cooperation kicks in. I mean, what we just hear from Africa, so we need also wider, in the wider sense, we need capacities to see, how do we make environmental or social due diligence for such programs, you know, before there are big investment programs. What is the due diligence procedure that would have to go through? And I think there are new aspects when it comes to these new technologies. How do we secure a just transition? I think there are lots of questions in that space. I mean, one thing is to phase out coal and the fossils. But I was on a panel yesterday where this was mentioned by representatives from Africa saying, yeah, but what do I do with the coal mining, with the coal miners? You know, if the hydrogen development happens elsewhere. I think all these are questions we have in a very small geographic space, still in Europe as well, but it's much more easier to handle. But I think we need probably, it's a learning process. And I would also think, you know, like think tanks or like in our case, the CEO Alliance, German Watch, others, civil society organizations, we still have not found yet, in my view, the golden bullet to do so. So I think there are capacity building at a corporate side, but also in the wider and at public authorities, of course. You know, how do you implement new legislation which is needed? How do public authorities, government bodies evaluate? And I think that it's a multiple faceted approach. And here I would think, you know, that especially also international cooperation will have to play a critical role in order to exchange experience, but also to develop things further.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anna Lührmann, I would like to ask you, before I give you the opportunity to ask questions, one last one from my side to you. You know, we have the dilemma. You know, we are on one hand, we have to speed up the whole process. We need big quantities. And on the other, we have, you know, the need for recognizing the sustainability criteria. And at the moment, I know that you are looking at certain countries where you developed especially programs, the JET-Ps with. Maybe you can explain a little bit about it, you know. But you're concentrating on these countries, but on the other hand, we already know that we need more. You know, as I said, Germany, and not only Germany, is power hungry. So how do you want to go about it?
Well, first of all, I mean, we need to reduce energy consumption, no? So, I mean, this is not sort of the amount of energy we consume. Also in an industrialized country like Germany is not a given. It's something that can be reduced through energy efficient technologies, and particularly in the industry. I still see a lot of potential as we come to the sort of two new investment cycles of investing in new machines. I mean, in most industry or most companies, you know, every depending on the type of machine, every 10, 20, 30, 50 years, you have to invest in new ones anyway. And we want to set as a government a clear incentive that these are really the most energy efficient possible, right? So I think always when we look at this topic, number one must be to reduce energy consumption. We can still do a lot in the installation of homes and all that stuff. There's really there is a lot of potential still, and we're trying to do a lot also as a government to unleash this. Secondly, I mean, we need to do a lot. I mean, we need to change everything, basically. No, I mean, we need to change every way we produce food. We produce, or we are mobile. We have to change the way we produce energy, where we import energy from, who exports it. So really, I mean, this everything here. These more than 30,000 people assembled here in Sharm El-Sheikh. They talk basically about the whole transformation of everything, basically, right? So we really have to do a lot, and the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, I think, are a critical building block, because the offer basically there is that to countries like South Africa is the first one, that the G7 countries will really invest heavily in the build-up of renewable energies for the home consumption in those countries. while at the same time the countries agree on a pathway to phasing out of coal. And I think these kind of partnerships are really the future because they clearly set the right incentives. There's a lot of funding involved with it. Local populations also benefit from it because the renewable energies can be more decentralized. And by the way, on your point, where sort of why is green hydrogen not sort of produced 100% in Europe? I mean, there's one clear reason that is for instance, in the field of solar, the more south you go, the more efficient it is, right? So wherever we need where we do whatever we can now to basically use every available space for solar in Germany and for wind power. But then for the production of hydrogen, it will probably be not enough. So that's why we're looking into imports. There are already big partnerships now on the way with Spain and Portugal, so in Europe. But then, indeed, I think the next sort of I see sort of three levels of partnership. One within Europe, then one where we can have pipelines in Northern Africa in particular, also a bit towards Asia. And then the third priority is then wherever then there would need to be transport via ships because it's so. Yeah, so that it's also clear that we need to communicate these priorities as well. For example, vis-à-vis Namibia. No, I mean this is so the prioritization is in that way. So yes, we need to do a lot more and change everything.
Thank you. So, who wants to comment, make questions, please?
Thank you so much. My name is Yona Turinayo from WWF Uganda. I was wondering, as you were presenting, whether some feasibility studies were conducted in these areas, these countries where you are investing in hydrogen, or you started investing without conducting feasibility studies. And how viable is this hydrogen technology compared to other technologies? Or how cost effective is it? Because I see it's as if you use energy or electricity, again, to produce power, using power to produce more power. Then how cost effective is it compared to other energy sources? Thank you.
Who wants to answer that question?
Do you want to start maybe? Or?
Yeah,
maybe you can explain.
I could only refer to numbers in a European context, which would probably not be very helpful for your context. However, you know that the target right now is to get, when it comes to hydrogen as an energy carrier, to get the cost per down to below €1. But right now we are still, far above. So it's about scaling. And with scaling, of course, over time, costs shall decrease. But that's of course a big concern, especially for industry in Europe and in Germany to get on our end the energy costs down, because that's in energy intense sectors like steel. It's really a decisive competitive factor for our business.
If I can add, I mean, the whole point is, and I think many people are not aware of that actually steel companies such as yours are not able to use electricity for a lot of their processes, right? Because the processes are built on using natural gas, also the glass industry to produce glass. So a lot of the chemical process, I mean, we're going through this now in Germany a lot because we're just beginning to realize all the spaces where Russian gas had been used. It had been used for heating homes, been used for producing steel, for producing glass, and in the chemical industry, and then many more smaller appliances that we're only now beginning to realize. So a lot of these things cannot be replaced with electricity, unfortunately. That would be indeed the cheapest and most effective way. And then also scientists are still, maybe there's one here who can share their experiences, are still working on carbon neutral ways of powering airplanes and heavy machinery, such for construction sites, for all this. And also here electricity will not be the solution because the batteries would have to be too big. So also for these kind of areas, hydrogen-related solutions are probably the way to go. So, and when it comes to investments, again here, what I hear from the experts is that we are at a moment now where the business case for green hydrogen is there, so that basically private companies are investing in the production of green hydrogen around the world. What we do as a government is we support these if we think they're feasible and sensible with sort of guarantees and these kind of things. And what we do is we help through some projects. We help to countries to develop also hydrogen technologies in the sense of learning about them, a bit like what the colleague from Namibia said, and then developing their own strategies. But it's not really our job to say, okay, here and there it could be done, should be done. And then we, of course, need to work on standards when it comes to sustainability and human rights and all that. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, let me thank you for this very interesting and fascinating discussion. Friends from Namibia, South Africa, and Germany. Very refreshing, very exciting as we all sit here and we can think about the transition. You mentioned the levels of interest for Germany and the third level. I'm from the Caribbean, Dominica. We are very aggressive on green hydrogen. We have in the Caribbean about 24 gigawatt excess power. And we would very much like you to elaborate, if possible, the level of partnership that can take place in this third level. So if at some point, perhaps after, we can get some clarity as to how that is, because we will very much like to participate in this third level that you talked about and partner with you in that endeavor.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do you want to say something about
it? Yeah, maybe we can chat some more later, but indeed the issue is then, sort of then we talk about transport via ship, like with the LNG gas these days. And then one has to clearly think about whether the cost is competitive, and when it comes sort of to building and investing in new places for production. Still, as I said, no, sort of the closer we get, the less energy we actually lose in the transport as well. No? So that also from the aims of here the Paris Agreement and to waste as little energy as possible. This is always the priority, of course. So, yeah.
Any other question?
I just wanted to make an observation. So, my name is Philip Julian. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, also from the Caribbean. And you know, we were fortunate in monetizing natural gas about 40 or 50 years ago, and we created one of the largest hydrogen hubs in Western Hemisphere called Point Lisas. Many ammonia plants, many methanol plants, and why I'm sharing this is right now we have ourselves in a challenging situation where we don't have enough natural gas, and we are forced to look at alternate sources of hydrogen, such as from water and renewable electricity. So all I'm saying is where there's a challenge, there's an opportunity, because we have been developing what looks to be one of the largest low carbon hydrogen production facilities in the world, called NewGen. And I'm simply sharing that because there's a synergy. As an energy transition fuel, natural gas can complement the advent of low carbon and green hydrogen into a country's economy, if done well and if done in a phased manner, so that 30 or 40 or 50 years from now, when natural gas is no longer utilized, it will give developing countries an opportunity to jumpstart by the use of the natural gas, the waste heat, something we're doing in Trinidad that I think can be beneficial to other developing nations, to allow them to transition into the green hydrogen economy gradually and sensibly. Thank
you. Does anybody want to comment or say something about it? Please. Yes.
I think, I disagree that we need to invest in gas gradually and then gradually move to green hydrogen. I think the discussion we've had here today, we can clearly see the benefits of leapfrogging directly into a green future without locking ourselves into fossil fuel pathways. So Africa, for example, has a benefit of being a latecomer and doesn't have the foundational infrastructure that's locked onto fossil fuels. So we do not want to do that, to lock Africa on natural gas, because once you get addicted to oil and gas, it's very hard to decarbonize and move away. So we should not make that mistake. We need to make Africa leapfrog, be a green leader. We have abundant renewable energy resources on the continent. We do not have to go the natural gas way. It might have benefited Trinidad, but it's not going to benefit Africa.
So that was a clear statement.
And just to add maybe one sentence to what you said, I mean that the whole EU is planning to be carbon neutral in less than 30 years. So there's no business case then, sort of, you were talking about 50, 60 years. And that the issue of the stranded investments, I think, is something that needs to be taken very, very seriously as well, not to speak of the impact on the climate.
I think there's another concern that it's there.
Yeah.
The concern is the hydrogen. Most of the time it's presented as green hydrogen. And if that's green hydrogen, my understanding is that it will be from solar and wind. But the way we find the rush towards establishing plants, would that really be green? Or is it just going to be green by name because we would be told like there's no emissions and whatever? Because what we see now is a move towards, diversifying the hydrogen. Not green, have pink, have gray, have whatever other color. And that is one of the concerns because the source base of the hydrogen is actually what we concerned about. So with the exploration of the massive exploration of gas in Africa, from the Eastern Cape shores to Namibia to the DRC to Kenya to Uganda to Tanzania, this is worrying, particularly that it's African countries that would not benefit from all this technology. And it seems like it's geared for export and not for people to be able to use in their areas. So it's not dealing with energy poverty, but however, it's contributing towards human rights violations.
Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of this discussion. I thank you all. Dr. Anna Lührmann, Minister of State for Europe and Climate of Germany. I wanted to say it properly. Amos Wemanja, Senior Renewable Energy Advisor from PowerShift Africa. Makoma Le Kalakala, Director Earthlife Africa. Erika Mink, Head of Governmental and Regulatory Affairs, ThyssenKrupp Steel Europe. Thank you very much for your contributions. I think we are at the beginning of a new era, the green hydrogen era, and I think it needs proper planning, and we have to look at the sustainability criteria and at the standards that have to be developed. And I just would like to refer to something that you can find, information that you can find in the internet. It is by the International PTX Hub. So check the internet. They have some information on standards already. And also, I told you that I'm in the German Council, in the German Hydrogen Council, and there are also one or two good ideas and advices on that website of the Council that you might find. Thank you so much, and let's hope that Namibia can really send us green hydrogen by 2025. Thank you so much.